this legit might be the first time we ever lose in this game. No more expansions where we're just, beating the big bad and then on to the next big thing. So far, based on all the hints, the recent loss in the voidspire, the datamined stuff, it appears we may be in for our first really major loss. While it might not be Xal'atath that wins, she may break something that can no longer be fixed. So far, we have hints of losing some major characters. We have hints for Azeroth, Azshara, Burning Legion, the Light Army, and most importantly, the Titans. If the Titans are forced to come to Azeroth in person, you know something has gone terribly wrong. So, what is everything we currently know, and is Midnight going to be the first expansion where we are defeated? So something I found really annoying is having games just all over the place. WoW on Battle.net, Witcher on GOG, and a bunch of others on Steam. Well, playtracker.net is the perfect free solution to this as an amazing integration tool. But it's not just that. You can not only organize everything in one single unified profile, but you got unified achievements, all the playtime in one place. You can connect with friends cross-platform, and also a really cool quest and leveling system where you gain XP and levels to unlock a whole bunch of cool features. So connect all the profiles right now with my link in the description below with playtracker.net. This has kind of been something people have actually anticipated for a long time as a big problem with WoW for really kind of the longest time, that essentially, we get this big threat, seems like a world-destroying threat, and then we defeat them, and then on to the next big thing, and then pretty much just rinse and repeat. After a while, it started losing any sort of legitimacy since we knew that we were going to defeat them as a big bad final boss anyway. Well, Blizzard has talked about it for years about how they're changing that, but Midnight is actually going to be where that is going to be realized. Actually, the perfect opportunity for this in the World Soul Saga. So, as you may have noticed by now, the entire saga is essentially just one mega expansion that leads into the other, and really right now we're very close to the 12.1 PTR. It does appear that this might be the first ever expansion we are legit going to lose. And not like a temporary loss, like maybe the Broken Shore, like we're actually going to full-on lose. It probably won't be a complete defeat, but I don't think this is going to be one of those expansions where we are going to defeat the big bad in the final patch. The reason I don't think that is going to be the case, because so far we actually have a lot of hints, and based on the data mining, we're about halfway through expansion, so we have some info to actually work with. So, the first and the most important hint, and the most obvious one as well, is that famous Chris Metz's interview on the World Soul Saga, mentioning that Xal'atath is here to stay throughout the saga. She isn't built to be a one-off villain, plus her whole role as the Harbinger isn't really to be the ultimate evil we have to defeat to save the planet, but it was even implied that she plans to unleash something that is going to spiral out of control, and that it won't be just her that we are going to face. I'm almost certain that this is referring to the return of the Titans, and it makes complete sense when you think about it. Remember, the Titans never really walked around on Azeroth. It seems like their whole strategy was based on controlling Azeroth, so times must be really desperate when they're going to have to come, not through the Keepers, but in person themselves. And the other thing I want to talk about is a few more hints that we have. Like, we have datamined that end campaign that is called War of the Light and the Shadow, and that has been confirmed as well previously, how this will be the final battle of these two forces, which we still don't know what it really means, but seeing that both forces have been battling in world-destroying wars for countless eons, you can imagine that this is going to be a bit more than just some random battlefield in Qualtalas. The other thing that already happened at the end of our very first intro in Midnight was the whole voidspire raid ending that you had pretty much all seen by now. Obviously, I think this is like the Khadgar 2.0 scenario where he didn't really die, he just returned later on, and I don't think Tyrellian and Illyria are gone, but we know that Arthur was saved as the Dark World was created. Now, some spoilers here of course, but we know how this was fixed. We've known this for at least 6 months. We know that the Dark World gets cleansed and it becomes a new type of energy. Spoilers again here, but there have been some hints that a lot of major characters are going to die here. And by the way, don't get me wrong, this hasn't been confirmed. There have been some hints that this is just the way Blizzard places them in the files, like they're killable, so it's not confirmed that a lot of these characters are going to be lost, but there has been some talk about it. However, technically, Xal'atath did already defeat Illyria, and also again some spoilers here, and I'll make a full video on this, but there have also been some hints that Illyria could be the final boss of this expansion based on some music that was data mined, and it's like a mix of her theme combined with void music. Still, despite the Dark World being cleansed, we still don't know Xal'atath's plan, and I gotta admit, it's getting a little bit annoying. I mean, she's slowly starting to become a little bit Jailer-esque villain with the constant taunting and everything, but all we know is that Xal'atath is ancient and she's after the world's soul, but it was never fully explained why Xal'atath out of all the places, whether us defending Xal'atath is really even going to stop the grand plan. Like, it's obvious she wants something to do with the sword in Xal'atath, and that Sargeras, Illidan Titans, and all that stuff is related to Xal'atath, and that is going to be what will cross over to Northrend. So, while we immediately lose and then win, when the Sunwell is cleansed, I think what is going to happen is that we are going to beat back the Void invasion of Xal'atath. We get a new Sunwell, Xal'atath is saved, but that is all a distraction that leads us into the finale of the saga, which is really going to be the last Titan. By the way, all these expansions are created. It's obvious that both the War Within and Midnight are really just elaborate setups for the grand finale, which is the final expansion. Another thing I want to quickly mention is this Akitunde guy that I talked about in the previous video that you can check out in great detail. It's super interesting. I'd recommend that you check it out. But the world that is now Voidstorm was called Pedacia in the ancient past, and this is some guy that was tasked to create a weapon, and he literally blew up the entire planet. It's in a few ways implied that this might have actually been the homeworld of Xal'atath when she was immortal, and that this cataclysmic event led her to the Void conversion. While we did kind of defeat him in this questline, it was implied that this guy wanted to do the same to Azeroth, and I think the whole ordeal might be a bit more than just a random side quest in Voidstorm. But I digress. The entire point is that by the way things are set up for us is that Xal'atath is really not that big of a deal like in the grand picture. I don't think the goal ever really was to conquer Xal'atath and take over the Sunwell. I think this is just one step of the plan, and the way it will work is that we will get a temporary victory by freeing Xal'atath and then doing the whole Amani stuff, potentially Forsaken things, and this is our like return to the old world to please the players. But the real big stuff is going to be what is going to happen after this. The biggest bit of evidence is, as I said, the Titans are coming to Azeroth in person. All of them, and as Iridikran said, we will see their true face, implying that they're not coming to save the world from the Void and bring peace to the world, but to accomplish their mission and do something. Now, something has to have royally gone wrong, so terribly wrong for the entire Titan Pantheon to have to come to Azeroth in person. I'm talking the end of the world scenario, like something really bad, and I think this end of the world scenario is going to get triggered by our ultimate loss in Midnight. I don't think necessarily Xal'atath is going to be the main villain anymore. It might even be possible that we could defeat Xal'atath at the end of Midnight. I don't discount the possibility that we could legit beat her in the end of this expansion, but it is definitely possible that she's going to break the mechanism that is kind of holding the universe together. I mean, right now we have hints of N'Zoth potentially returning, Azshara, we got some Burning Legion hints, at the same time actually multiple Burning Legion hints. The recent cosmology charts imply that Azeroth may be holding the fabric of the universe together, and the way realms function, and then at the end of Midnight we lose, she breaks this mechanism and starts the Ragnarok, the end times, and then literally every single group, every single villain out there in the universe, every single army comes at the same time in absolute chaos. It even makes sense with Ragnarok, like Northrend and everything, like the entire team. And so far, this type of like end world scenario in Northrend seems more plausible by the day as we get more and more evidence. Thanks for watching. Check out how is that the Alliance never managed to actually recover Lordaeron by clicking on the screen, and check out my brand new Witcher lore channel that I recently opened by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!